Hope you're doing well. So thank you so much for joining us today to hear a little bit about the programs at Middlesex University, our psychology programs. And before I start telling you a bit about psychology and those programs, I'd like to introduce myself. Hello, I'm David Westley, and I'm the head of Department of Psychology at Middlesex University. And on the screen now, if you'd like to screenshot it or write it down, is my email contact. If you'd like to get in touch to ask anything, follow anything up. The plan is to tell you a little bit about why I think it's a brilliant time to study psychology, and then tell you a little bit about psychology at Middlesex University and how we teach it, and the ways in which we specialise in offering support to students studying psychology, and how we share our expertise with you. And what I'll do is I'll give you a sort of fairly brief overview, and I hope that we can leave a bit of space at the time so that I can open up the floor to any individual questions that you have about our programs. So hopefully you've had a chance to just note down that email address if you think it would be useful to you. So I'm sure you know this because you're thinking about studying psychology, but let's all make sure we're starting from the same place. So psychology is the science of mind and behavior. So it's really the science that tries to understand everything we are and everything that we do. So psychologists are interested in what people think about, what they feel, and what they do. And I think that makes psychology feel relevant to all of us. But what makes it especially important, and what makes it important in the 21st century, is the question of why. Why do people think what they do? Why do they feel as they do? And why do they do what they do? And I might be biased because I'm a psychologist, but I think there's never been a better time to think about studying psychology, because psychology and the work that psychologists do is now part of just about every aspect of our lives. I'm sure you'll realize that the world is changing. The world is always changing. And one of the tasks for psychologists is to ask the question, well, how can we help people adjust to those changes? What can we do to support people through the challenges that we encounter in this ever-changing world in which we live? So some of the questions that psychological science and psychological practice can provide answers to include how can we eliminate prejudice and inequality? How do we help and support people when times are so uncertain and constantly changing? How do we support people who have experienced tragedy, loss, and trauma? How do we prevent people in a world where, well, there's been lots of recent lockdowns and perhaps we communicate in slightly different ways? How do we help people from becoming lonely and feeling isolated? How do we help people to keep pace with the 21st century? And how do we help them adapt to the fast-moving changes in technology? And how do we persuade people that we need to take care of the planet that we live on, take care of our environment? These are questions not just for psychologists, but these are questions that psychologists have a role in answering and trying to support people through change. And psychology, as I said before, is really affecting every area of our life now. And when people think about psychology, they often think about the application of psychology to mental health and psychological well-being and emotional well-being. But the application of psychology is much broader than that. And so people with psychology degrees really have this huge range of pathways that they might follow with their degree. So psychology is applied to how we help people change behaviors, particularly things like health behaviors. How do we do things or choose to do things that are good for us? Psychology is applied to enhancing people's creativity. How do we help people think their best ideas, do their best work? Psychology is applied throughout the criminal justice system. How do we use psychology to understand the causes of crime, to rehabilitate people who engage in crime, and prevent the circumstances in which people are more likely to commit crime? Psychology is also applied throughout the education sector. How do we use psychology to understand how people learn best? What helps people to grow their knowledge and understanding? And psychology is also applied throughout the corporate sector. So, as you might imagine, psychology is often a big part about how people think about marketing products, advertising products, and promoting goods and services. And psychologists work throughout the corporate sector in businesses and in management, helping people select the right people for jobs, train people effectively, and helping people to enhance their well-being at work. And sorry, I'm just in the way of the box there. I'm just going to move myself. Yeah, there we go. I'm a little bit smaller now. And then finally, psychology is applied to sport and leisure. And nowadays, every elite athlete or sports team has at least one psychologist working with them, so that we know that psychological performance and preparation is every bit as good as physical performance and preparation. So there's this huge and wide and broad application of psychology. So it's a fantastic subject to study at university level. Let me tell you a little bit about the Department of Psychology at Middlesex University. We're one of the biggest departments of psychology in the UK. At the moment, we have 48 permanent members of academic staff. Those are the people who teach psychology at Middlesex University. We also employ many, many more people to give occasional lectures or make small contributions to our teaching programs. But the core staff at Middlesex University are all practitioners of psychology as well as teachers of psychology. One of the things that universities do, as well as teaching, passing on knowledge, is that they create knowledge. And so the majority of the staff in the Department of Psychology are either actively engaged in research to expand our knowledge of psychology, or, and in some cases they're both, they are practitioners in psychology. They are actually out there in the world working with clients and companies applying psychological methods. So what that means is that Middlesex, the psychology we teach you, comes directly from the people who are creating that knowledge of psychological science and practice. So one of the things that's kind of, well, I suppose there are many things that are sad about our present lockdown, but I would have loved the opportunity to show you around some of our specialist facilities. We do on our website have an opportunity for a virtual tour, but I don't think that's quite the same as being able to show you some fantastic facilities we have, for example, in our psychophysiology lab. We're one of the few psychology departments who's got a lab like this for students, where you learn about the relationships between people's biological states and their psychological states. Some of the fantastic spaces that we have for learning about research methods for psychology students that are just reserved for psychology students. We've got some nice little interview rooms where students can get on with project work. For those students who are on one of our programs where you practice counselling or coaching skills, that's a space that they can work as well. And we have some really high-end specialist facilities that students wouldn't normally use until the final year of their degree, but they are resources for project work, including a full editing and observation suite with one-way mirrors where you can unobtrusively observe interactions between people, and also a very recently developed neuroscience electrophysiology lab where staff and students take precision measurements of electrical activity arising from brain activity. So let me tell you a little bit about each of the different programs. These are the pathways in psychology that we offer at Middlesex University. We have a psychology degree just on its own, and then psychology with counselling skills, psychology with criminology, psychology with education, and psychology with neuroscience. And all of these pathways are accredited by the British Psychological Society for, bit of a mouthful this, the graduate basis for chartership. And what that means, you might, when you're researching psychology courses, you might see this kind of thing all the time. What that means is that our programs give you the first step towards fully qualifying as a psychologist. Now, not everyone who does a psychology degree goes on to fully qualify as a psychologist, because there's actually this huge range, fantastic, almost overwhelming range of different directions you can take a psychology degree in. But certainly a degree that's accredited by the British Psychological Society is something that's recognised in a lot of different employment contexts. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about each of these programs, starting with BSc Psychology, which is a program that we've been running in one form or another at Middlesex since 1968. And this course is probably our most flexible program. It's probably the most suitable option for people who are not quite sure what direction they would like to take after a psychology degree. They're interested in psychology, but perhaps not decided about the career path that follows on from that. And this is a good choice because it offers a broad education in psychology. Like all of our pathways, in fact, it allows you to go and specialize in any of the major branches of psychology, but also for people who decide they don't want to be a psychologist. Psychology degrees offer this fantastic range of graduate skills, and they're skills that are really highly sought after by employers. So psychology graduates learn to think like scientists. They learn to think critically about data, information. They're very good at spotting fake news, which is a big thing, a big challenge that we all face at the moment. So psychologists have got these really rigorous thinking skills, but because they've been studying psychology, they've also developed people skills and compassion skills. And employers don't just want people who are clever and have high-level thinking skills. They actually want people who are going to be able to relate well to other people that they work with, who are going to understand the dynamics between people in order to be able to get tasks done. So psychology as a degree subject really kind of really gives you a little head start on a number of those kind of graduate professions that don't ask for any particular type of degree, but they do ask for a degree. Next program I'm going to tell you about is Psychology with Counselling Skills, and this is a pathway that we started probably about, was it about 20 years ago now, I think, and we developed this specialized pathway because we know that a lot of people who study psychology are studying psychology because they're interested in careers in one of the therapy professions. And the therapy professions include counseling, psychotherapy, clinical psychology, and counseling psychology. Unfortunately, I don't have the time in today's talk to tell you about the differences, the subtle differences in those pathways, but we know that a lot of people are interested in developing in those pathways. So this degree, it offers a broad education in psychology in all of the core areas of psychology, but there's a specialist strand which takes up about a quarter of the degree that is focused on counselling and therapeutic communication. And it's not focused on it in just a theoretical kind of way. A great deal of that work is practical work done in workshops where students work together to develop the therapeutic communication skills that are used in all of these therapy professions that I've just mentioned. Next program I shall tell you about is Psychology with Criminology, and this is probably the combination of subjects that have been running longest at Middlesex University, because they are subjects that go really well together. And this is really a program for people who are interested in applying psychology in any area of criminal justice, particularly people who are thinking about going into forensic psychology. Although if you are thinking about going into forensic psychology, just make sure that you get some good information about that, because there's some very, very unrealistic representations of forensic psychology on programs like CSI and Waking the Dead. Forensic psychologists don't really work in that way. But this is an excellent pathway to start towards building a career in forensic psychology. So the next pathway to tell you about is Psychology with Education. So here in developing this and offering this pathway, we're thinking about people who are hoping to apply psychology to working with young people, particularly in educational contexts. So there is a psychological profession called educational psychology, which specializes in supporting children and young people with special educational needs or emotional needs that make educational settings more of a challenge. Many people with psychology degrees go into education in other ways, teaching sometimes, or as part of special needs education. And then last, but certainly not least, is the newest program in our portfolio, Psychology with Neuroscience. And psychology and neuroscience are just two slightly different ways of understanding human behavior and human experience. So psychologists are interested in experience and behavior at the level of how we relate to each other, as well as our own experience of the world, whereas neuroscientists are focused on the biological basis of that. Psychologists are interested in biology because it does tell us some important and interesting things about our experience, but psychologists are also interested in the social circumstances that drive our behavior and experience. So these are two complementary ways of understanding experience and behavior. And with technological advances in the last couple of decades, neuroscience has really exploded as a discipline because it's so much easier now to measure certain aspects of brain function. I tried to fit as many as I could in the screen in a way that you might be able to see some of them. I can see I'm right in front of some of them. So there are, all in all, there's 26 different options of which you would choose between 4 and 6, depending on which pathway that you're on, that you can do in your final year. And these relate to various different areas of expertise that staff in our department have. And because we've got such a large department, that means that we can offer this fantastic range of options. There is something there for anyone of any interest and any career direction. And I'm not going to read them all out to you now. They are listed on our website, and there's just loads of choice there. So I did mention a work placement. Now you can do some work experience as part of your final year study. That's one of the options I didn't manage to get onto the screen of the last slide. So there is an opportunity to do work experience as part of a 3-year degree. But there's also an opportunity for extended experience by doing a work placement. And a work placement is a whole year's worth of experience that would be taken in the 3rd year of a 4-year full-time degree. And some people might think, well, it'd be slightly strange to increase the length of your degree by an additional year. The reason that many people do it is because it gives them an outstanding start to their career paths that follow on from their degree. It's a real opportunity to work along psychologists or other professionals that apply psychological knowledge and really kind of be able to see the things that you've been learning about in class applied in the real world and how that happens. So thank you so much for joining today's event. I should have, just before they switch off the Zoom for us, sorry if this makes you feel a bit dizzy, I am just going to go back to the slide where I had put my email address. Take a quick screenshot of that if, just in case you need to get in touch and ask anything. So I am going to wish you all a lovely weekend. I very much hope that I will welcome some of you to our campus in Hendon in this coming September. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Ačiū, David Westley. Mes esam studijoje kartu su Nerijumi ir šiandieną mūsų visoje šitoje ilgoje transliacijoje šnekam apie daugybę universitetų, daugybę studijų programų, dabar konkrečiai apie psichologiją kalbėjo David Westley iš Middlesex Universiteto. Mes sakėm prieš pat Davido kalbą, kad populiaru tai yra Lietuvoje vis dar psichologijos programa.
Tai gal, Karoli, reikėtų pradėti pirmiausiai nuo pačio universiteto. Tai Middlesex Universitetas Londone, tikrai nuostabus universitetas, tikrai labai gera reputacija tarp lietuvių. Ir tikrai prisimenu nuo turbūt darbo pradžios, kad Middlesexas tikrai kas metai vienas iš pasirinktų universitetų visuomet būdavo toks tarp dominuojančių, ypatingai jeigu mes kalbėsim apie Londoną. Dabar jeigu pereinant prie psichologijos studijų programos, tai daug kartų mes bandėm kalbėti ir ieškoti, kurios studijų programos yra populiariausios, tai aš galiu vienareikšmiškai pasakyti, kad psichologija visą laiką papuola į 5 programų ir nepriklausomai nuo laikotarpių. Yra programos, kurios kartais galbūt truputėlį vienais metais populiaresnės, kitos kitais metais, tai aš galvoju, kad psichologija kaip studijų programa, jinai išlaiko savo tą kartelę ir visą laiką papuola į 5 programų. Ir kas man labai patiko, turbūt daugelis, kas žiūrėjot labai įdėmiai, gale parodė Davidas, kiek yra pakraipų pačios psichologijos, iš ko galima rinktis. Ir kada mes kalbam turbūt apie psichologijos išsilavinimą, tai kad jauni žmonės, kurie klauso mūsų šiandieną, kad tikrai turėtumėt suprasti, kad jeigu norit būti tas psichologas, kuris atsidaro kabinetą, kuris konsultuoja žmonės, tai yra pakankamai ilgas kelias. Ir tikrai nepamirškit, kad pabaigus bakalauro studijas tikrai reikės baigti ir magistrantūrą, reikės tikrai nemažai darbinės praktikos, tai reiškia, kad mes kalbam apie tokį kaip medicininį išsilavinimą, kad jūs galėtumėt būti psichologais. Bet psichologijos pats išsilavinimas iš savęs ant tiek jis yra universalus, kur mes jį galim labai plačiai naudoti. Ir jeigu tu baigi psichologiją, tai nereiškia, kad tu ir matai tą galutinį tašką kaip psichologas. Nes psichologijos pats išsilavinimas žiūrint darbų skelbimus, tai tikrai yra labai paklausus ir visą laiką tarp tų dominuojančių būna. Galbūt kažkas ieško personalų vadovų. Koks išsilavinimas, be abejo, psichologija. Tas pats geras vadovas, turintis psichologijos išsilavinimą, turbūt yra vienas reikalingiausių, dėl to, kad yra daug dalykų su darbiniais santykiais. O ką labai noriu akcentuoti, turbūt, kas tikrai yra nuostabu ir kas labai skiriasi nuo Lietuvos, tai kad užsienyje psichologiją jau bakalauro laipsnėje studijuodamas tu gali labai sukonkretinti. Tau nereikia, kad būtinai bendrinė psichologija rinktis, kad galėtum po to tik magistrantūroje studijuoti. Ir kas man labai patiko ir praktikoje esu pats truputėlį pačiupinėjęs, aš turiu draugą, kuris profesionaliai sportuoja ir jis reguliariai vaikšto pas sportų psichologą. Ir kaip kartais mes sakom, kad tas psichologas, koks jo ten indėlis, tai jeigu paklaustumėt profesionalių sportininkų, ką daro sportų psichologas, tai jisai tikrai padeda pasiekti geresnių rezultatų. Nes dažnai mes kalbamės ir tikrai juokaujam kartais draugų tarpe, kad treniruotėse žmogus būna pats geriausias, bet atėjus varžybų laikotarpį pasižiūri, kad to žmogus net, jeigu kalbėsim apie krepšinį aikštelį kažkur, tai tu jo nebematai.